This is another episode of Facts Only. So Tolani, people are saying that distros and label services companies are really killing Nigerian record labels. Yeah, so how did streaming become such a formidable tool to the music industry?
Let's go back to like the 50s, 60s and 70s when we could understand like numbers and a lot of other things, because like 60s we had the Beatles, then we had Elvis, Jackson 5, Michael Jackson. So we can track the rudiments of numbers from there, right? So, but around those times, people were mostly consuming music through vinyls. But later, around the 80s, right, mobile devices became a thing. So a company like Sony created like the Walkman, for example. So the Walkman then became what we call the Discman. But the Discman is still a Walkman, right? So those things became like things that you could carry around. If you've seen a vinyl before, it's not a mobile device. Like the boombox, you can carry it around as well. Yes. Like in the 90s, for example, what hip-hop heads used to carry around, if you remember, was the boombox, right? But a lot of people were still consuming music, like Michael Jackson albums, to consume it through your Walkman and this one. So by the fact that people who consume things via mobile devices and the fact that there was some sort of a greater push, and there was better circulation of music, like 90s witnessed the rise of hip-hop and R&B, for example. So in this global scheme of things, numbers skyrocketed. So by the late 90s, numbers became out of here. Like Britney Spears, for example, sold like 25 million on her debut album. But around that time, piracy, the internet started becoming a thing. So 97, 98, was a dot-com bubble and .com. Like dot-com bubble became a thing. Companies skyrocketed out of here, right? So piracy started creeping into the music industry a little bit here and there. So numbers were taking a hit. So a guy called Sean Parker, who is a coder, who was the first president of Facebook, created a company called Napster. So piracy became a thing, right? And by 2005, 2006, numbers are taking a significant hit. Like numbers became like where people were selling maybe a good 10 million before. Maybe Usher, for example, Confessions, sold like, was a diamond certified album. Like Country Grammar was a diamond certified album. People were still selling diamond albums in 2005, 6, 7. But it wasn't exactly at the same rate anymore, because the way people were consuming music had become diversified, and money wasn't going back to the pockets of major labels. So they needed a new avenue that was more attuned to the times and could guarantee the revenue that they were making, right? So enter streaming. Streaming became the new reality. And it wasn't just a thing. The internet was skyrocketing as a way of life. Like in Nigeria, for example.
In every aspect.
Yeah, in every aspect. Like you will see in Nigeria, for example, music blogs became the thing. Like 5, 6, 7 music blogs came into the picture. Alaba started struggling with music blogs. So Facebook became a thing. MySpace became a thing. To Go became a thing. So it was like last year, for example, streaming accounted for about 64% of the global direct music revenue last year. So it's crazy. That's why streaming is a new reality now. That's basically why streaming is it.
Wow. So how do these artists get their music onto digital streaming platforms?
So what streaming did is streaming also blew open like a new array of opportunities for people. So like not just for record labels, not just for artists, like there were also companies like in real life before, like when we're consuming music via CDs and cassette tapes, the system was very simple. The artist creates the music, right? The engineer records it, then you bring it onto a CD, right? Like then you get it to the companies, the packing company, the company that packages CDs. They package the CDs. They give it to the trucking companies. The trucking companies take them to the point of sale, right? But now it's become abridged. Like CDs are still selling. Don't get me wrong, but not as much anymore. A lot of people live online. Like we don't even watch TVs anymore.
Right?
Right. So what we now see is instead of that, we now see digital distribution companies. like before in Nigeria, it was Alaba they were the distributors that were distributing the CDs and everything, and some of them even owned like trucking companies and all of that. But now it's digital distribution companies. You get your music, the soft file, give it to somebody. They are the distribution companies. They get the music onto those platforms, because except Audiomack and maybe SoundCloud, artists are not allowed to put their music onto streaming platforms by themselves. So the reality is, for a lot of reasons, some of the reasons why DSPs were avoiding, they are still here because they're streaming fraud is a thing now. Like a lot of people putting other people's music on streaming platforms under different names. It's still a thing. But that was why they didn't allow it, and for a lot of other reasons as well, because of tracking and numbers, and because labels were involved, rights holders, some of those other intricacies. But so a lot of these opportunities came on. So like you see companies in Nigeria like maybe Mass Solutions, not just okay, Distro, Empower later in the year, later in time, you see companies like a lot of other companies. Then the thing sort of came into another era where like companies like Platoon, which are now, they took on the distribution thing and became something else. So Platoon, Empire, 1RPM, some of these other companies. But then there are then distribution companies in the real sense of it, like DistroKid, TuneCore, CD Baby. What those ones do is, instead of like representing the artist, what they just do, like representing the artist and then like putting the music there and having maybe a potential percentage on it, what they do is they just distribute for you. A TuneCore, for example, gives you 100% of your revenue back. I was speaking to, shout out to the head of TuneCore in West Africa, Chairman Luchukuta, she was telling me that 100% goes back to the artist. So, but even then, a company like Believe, which owns TuneCore, like they do some publishing and some of these other things. So it goes down to the model as well. So basically, that's what it is.
Okay. So it seems that there's a difference between distros and label services companies. So
Distros are a lot of label services companies are distros at heart, right? Most of them you can seldom see a standalone label services company. A label services company is still a distro, but not all label services companies are distros. But not all distros are label services companies. So here's the thing that you need to look at it from. A lot of these companies still have to distribute the music through Merlin that is plugged to the DSPs, right? So, but the difference is the model that they operate. So a company like companies like CD Baby, DistroKid, TuneCore, what they do is very simple. Artists submit music to them, and they charge artists maybe monthly or yearly. So if you pay $19.99 or $9.99, for example, maybe throughout the year or maybe every month, you can submit music to them as much as you want. Maybe there's a limit on some of them sometimes, but they don't have any rights to the music. But label services companies, what they do is very simple. They have a deal with the artist. So these ordinary distros, they might not have rights to publishing, neighboring rights, sync, all these things. But label services companies can have rights to the music. So what some of them do is very simple. They understand that, like record labels, for example, like over the past 5, 6, 7 years, 10 years, fights have been intensified about ownership of music. Like artists, you see artists like Kanye West. Kanye West was peeing on his Grammy Award some years ago because he doesn't have rights to his music. Jay-Z had to buy his masters back some years ago. So like ownership has now become a thing because everybody wants to be able to leave their music and catalog for their children. And for a lot of reasons also because like companies these days, like Hypnosis, for example, are buying like catalog from artists, like they are purchasing old ass catalogs from artists. So artists are very obsessed with the idea of ownership these days. So those label services companies know that, and they know that artists also need money, and not all artists can be signed to labels. And there's a ton of artists across the world. So what they want to do is they realize that there is a hollow in this continent. Like especially in Africa, since we're talking about Africa, Nigeria, for example, there's a hollow here. There's an opportunity here. There's 200 million people. There's like 50% of them is under 19 years old. Internet penetration is rising. Consumer behavior is slightly changing, but it's still very crooked. Yeah. Purchasing power is still crooked, but slightly evolving, right? So it means that there's an opportunity for us here if we can like they've already lost the market, the foreign market, the European and the American market. They've lost them to the major labels. Like those guys own the catalogs and everything. So they are trying to create a new avenues. Let's take over the frontier here. So let's take chances. It's a market share thing. It's a thing of making money. It's a thing of owning catalog as well. So for some streaming platforms as well, which are like maybe like Apple Music. Apple Music is owned by Apple, and Platoon, which is a label services company, is owned by Apple. Like for example, if Universal wakes up one day and says, we don't want to give our music to Apple Music anymore, it's unlikely. It's unlikely because artists are going to fight. Don't you want us to do it? But let's say they do it. Like a lot of these streaming platforms are the mercy of major labels. Like they are their mercy. So imagine like an Apple Music, for example. Apple can say, instead of last year, for example, we made $60 billion in equity, right? $60 billion in equity. That's what we made. But right now, we can afford to, maybe a random artist, for example, can get like $10,000 for an EP of like a Platoon or whatever these days, right? Whereas you might not be able to even get a label in the first place to even take a look at you, because labels are, it's a lot of money to run a label and even blow an artist. So they know that if we can spend $1 billion over 10 years on Africa, like acquiring catalog, then it's going to make a lot of sense for us in the long term. Because if you are making 60 billion in a year in equity, and we can only spend $1 billion, we can spend $1 billion on one continent in 10 years, then it makes a lot of sense for us. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. So the idea is the mathematics of it and the fact that they are getting a new frontier. They're acquiring catalog, a ton of catalog, which makes a lot of sense. They're acquiring a ton of catalog. They're also acquiring a lot of market share, which is where the real fight is. Market share. Like market share is where the fight is. So that's why a lot of these things make sense. Like it comes down to the model. Like that's the differences. That's where it comes in. So for example, like the question you asked is, a label services company has rights to the music. They can say, okay, your EP, this is your EP, give it to us. We give you $10,000 for marketing and whatever you want it to use it to do. And we license your music for 5 years. So your streaming revenue, we own a significant cut of it. And maybe some of them, sometimes you can own publishing from the artist, and you can also own some other. You can own, these days some labels are even looking into like label services companies are looking into 360 deals. So they're on the sync deals, some of those other things. Like you saw Fireboy's EP Champion used by Bayern Munich recently. That's the work of Empire, right? So it's like expanding on the revenue streams and a lot of those things. So the difference majorly is a label services company can have rights to the music. An ordinary distro might not have rights.
All right. Oh yes. So let's talk about the artists. Like, how does it favor them?
The artists, it favors them because, like I said, it comes down to ownership. Like it comes down to the idea of ownership for a lot of them. Ownership, creative freedom, and a lot of things. Right? Like in the instance of a label, for example, when you're signed to a label, the label basically owns you for the duration of the contract you signed. Like if you are not giving them what they want, then you cannot go scot-free. It's just that simple. Like you signed the contract, my guy, honor the contract. So what these guys offer is an alternative, basically. So since there's a lot of you artists on ground, and a lot of money cannot go around to all of you, I reach all of you, and you need an opportunity, you need money, you've been hustling for a long time. We can give you, say, $10,000, right? Or if it's a label services company, if it's a distro, we can offer you a chance to own your music 100% because we can plug it to you and get maybe 100% of your streaming revenues back. But if it's a label services company, we give you we own rights to your music. We give you maybe $10,000, $7,000, whatever, and then you can then still have creative freedom to your music, because if I own your music, if a label services own your music for 5 years, for example, you can own your music after 5 years. But a label, for example, you might not own it for like maybe 25 years. It's very possible that you don't, depending on the laws of wherever you are. And some artists are still fighting. Some artists have to buy them back, buy their masters back. So the idea is very simple: creative freedom, a chance at making money. If you're an artist, for example, and a Platoon or an Empire offers you $10,000, a Platoon offers you $10,000, right? So for a body of work, you might not have made $10,000 on that body of work anyway. So you might as well take $10,000 since you don't have a label that's on your neck offering you deals. And if you are going to distribute through DistroKid, you might not, instead of maybe leveraging your project for $10,000, maybe you just bank on what you can get and then push your music to the ends of the earth as possible. So that's basically the advantages for the artists.
Okay. So how did Nigerian record labels gain so much power?
Let's look at it this way. Nigerian record labels have been around for a minute, but where the power really started off, like, got really, really strong. There were some labels that you hear of, like in the East and the Southwest especially, in like the 60s, 70s, and the 80s. But the 90s were really where things really took off. Look at it this way. In the 90s, record labels, like foreign record, in the 80s, 70s, 80s, foreign record labels like came here because Nigeria was in a massive boom, right? We joined OPEC in the 60s. In the 60s, yeah, we joined OPEC in the 60s. And there was an album, everything was great in this country. We hosted Festac, everything looked good, right? So the labels were tempted to come in, and we had an expansive array of talents. So like, for example, Sonny Ade, for example, when Bob Marley died in 1981, a label was trying to use Sonny Ade to replace Bob Marley, right? Whoa. So that's the level of like the rep that our artists had. So the major labels started coming in, just like they are here now. A lot of them were here. But by the 80s and the 90s, Nigeria had problems with military rule, decadence, politics, and an old election. There was unrest in the country. So they had to leave, and they did leave. So like returnees like Kenny Ogbe and Dayo Adeneye, for example, they came back from the US, they came here, and they saw an opportunity. There's an array of talent. We can raise money, or maybe we have the money ourselves. Returnees like maybe, what's his name? Obi Asika, right? They came and, opportunity is here. That Obi Asika of Storm Records. Let's invest some money into this place and let's make money. And the good thing is Alaba was there at the time. So what is Alaba? Alaba was an international market where like labels or artists could go pitch their music. Like you could pitch a single, for example. If you pitch a single, they can put your singles onto like mixtapes. That's playlist. The version of playlist that we know. That's basically what Alaba was doing then, right? So you can put your music on this thing and you can make it X. Even if you're not making any money from it, if you're not the owner of the playlist, we can give your music massive exposure because you don't know where that mixtape is going to get to. Like a ton of Nigerian records have blown off mixtapes. Those mixtapes. You remember those mixtapes? Yeah. So if it's an album, for example, you can go to an Alaba market, because they had so much power and so much reach, and they had so much influence that they were influencing the sound and the genre of music in Nigeria. So what they could do is, you will go to them and you pitch them. They give you some money up front, and then they go sell your CDs, and then maybe sometimes you might, unlikely, but you might, it's not unlikely, but you might get a small percentage of the CD sales, like after, as residuals, maybe. But usually they give you money up front and they go sell your CDs. They make money through sales, piracy, inflation of numbers, and everything. So without Alaba, basically, there might not have been a Nigerian record label structure because trying to get the music out might have been a problem. So with that, because of Alaba, Nigerian record labels had so much power, so much influence. Like they could just, you know that if you could get a label that was really, really ready to spend the money on you, and if you had the talent and the right kind of music and they had the right thing, you could really blow. So that was how they had so much power. So
does this mean that Nigerian music always had a structure?
Nigerian music had a structure. It's like, shout out to the rapper AQ. AQ would always say that Nigerian music has a structure. It's just not a proper structure. Like there's a structure.
Yes.
It's dysfunctional. It's problematic, but it's still a structure nonetheless. Okay. Because there is a model to it. You can understand it. It's not scattered. It's not something that just rules to the answer. It's not something that only finds a solution when there's a problem. It's something that there is a channel on ground. If you follow it, you might make money. So there's a system. In the old days, the system was Alaba. Now the system is Distros, streaming platforms.
Okay. So what's the Nigerian record label model?
Nigerian record label model is very simple, right? But there are two models. The first model is very simple. The first model is one, the model that goes into in the oldest, like I said, I talked about Alaba the other time. That was the 90s, 2000s model, 2010s model. These days, the model is slightly different. It's because streaming has taken over, and like we did a facts only episode some weeks ago about how CD sales, Nigerian artists were abandoning CD sales for streaming platforms. So what it means that a lot of music consumption is internet based. At least we want to believe it's internet based. So what a lot labels now have to go through like distros or label services. But still, even if they are going through that, how a label differs from a distro or a label services is that a label will pick up an artist, give the artist an advance, right? Okay. Give you an advance of say 10,000, give you a house and maybe money. Sometimes it doesn't happen, they just give you a house and a car. But some labels, which is very rare, can give you a house, a car and some money. And then they sign you to maybe like a 2 or 3 album deal. And then they own a significant amount of the rights to the music in totality and the perpetuity, right? So publishing, they have their hands in everything. So it's basically called a 360 deal, right? That's what Nigerian labels run on. Because why? If Nigerian labels don't sign 360 deals, they don't have any chance at making their money back. None. Because the system is not great. Like collecting bodies, some of these things. Like even money from direct sales is not really there. Because how many people are streaming music in the country? People they don't want to print CDs anymore, even though CDs are still selling. Because of stupidity, they don't want to print CDs anymore, right? So the idea is, so labels, the only chance that they do is, what they do is, they, like artists do, they are going to make music through live brand deals, live performances,
yes,
and so on.
Exactly.
That's still where the bank wants to make their money. So after they spend all those money on the advance for the artists, they are still going to spend on marketing, on branding, on style, and some of those things. That's how they differ from label services companies. Label services companies will give you the advance on maybe $10,000, and then they will have rights to your music. They will have rights to your music. They might have rights to the publishing. They might not have rights to sync, neighboring rights, or some of those, depending on negotiation and the terms of the contract. But they still have rights to the music, like the label. But the difference is they only license the music. They don't own the music. Labels own the music usually, right? Okay. Those are the differences. Those are the differences. So labels, after the labels spend those money, I was speaking to a record label boss who was telling me that he spends like $100 million naira on his Nigerian artists. And you can understand, because a standard Nigerian music video these days costs like 5 million naira. And 5 million naira might still not shoot a standard video in some, depends on like the location, the director that you're using, the cast, a lot of things. So the only chance that they have to make is 360. The only chance they have to make their money back is 360, basically. That's it.
Okay, but do you think that there are still some similarities between distros and record labels, like the structure?
Yeah. So the structure. Let's compare like 2000s record label structure to like current deal distro label services model. Like both of them give out advance. Okay. Like label services and labels, they give out an advance in some form. If these guys are giving out $10,000 to like a small artist, and maybe like a bigger artist is earning like maybe $200,000 or $300,000, or $400,000. If label, for example, if it's like a startup label, a smaller label, they might give the artist a car, a house, and maybe some money. And then if it's like a major label signing like a whiskey, for example, you can imagine that the money is going to go up as well, exactly. Like label services. And then both of them have some form of rights to the music, expansive rights that goes beyond just sales, right? But the difference is a Nigerian record label might have like totality of rights and in perpetuity. A label services might just have publishing, and sometimes they don't even have publishing. Sometimes they don't. But a distro, for example, is a different ballgame entirely. A distro just is go out. What we want to do is we give us your music, we help you put it out there, you get your money back. So that's the difference. So then all those labels, current Nigerian record labels and label services, also as a matter of fact, they still get money through other means. So for example, that's why you say Fireboy, like I said the other time, they are getting money from the use of music. A label, if it was a record label that maybe had like a publisher of some sort, like a real life, like maybe like a probable like offline publisher, they can still plug those music. Offline publishers do some of those things, so they can plug those music and they still make some of those money back, and then they give it to the PROs and some of those other things. So, but like then let's come to like the current record labels. The current no, before we go there, let's get to differences. Okay, I think I've talked about differences.
You talked about that.
The current model of Nigerian record labels and Nigerian stream and label services and distros, label services especially, is that they overlap these days.
Okay.
They overlap because, like I said, everything is basically internet-based these days. So what they do is, instead of, so a label sometimes now goes to a distro. For example, you see Maven. Allstars album is released on that platform, even though it's owned by Maven Records. Olamide YBNL has a deal with Empire, right? So some of those things are there now. But even with that, the major differences, those similarities and differences with 90s model of Nigerian record labels still exist. But the major difference is, even though a label goes through a distro, when the music comes back from the distro after the distro has, after the label services company has licensed it, the label still owns rights to the music.
The music, yeah.
Still owns the rights to the music. So that's basically what it is. That's basically the differences.
Okay. So earlier you mentioned Alaba.
Yeah.
So are you trying to say that Alaba has been at the forefront of all these things?
Nigeria has pioneered a lot of models that we'll never understand. Like a lot of models. Like, what is basically happening in the modern era is very simple. It's that a record label, you have to get your music to the distros. Then the distro gets it to the streaming platforms, and the streaming platforms then playlist your music and they get it to the people. But Alaba was a one-stop shop for a lot of things. Alaba was the playlist. Alaba was a distro. Alaba was the point of sale.
Yeah.
Or maybe give it to some people who are affiliated with Alaba, who are the point of sale. So that's, like, you can see that what we now call playlists is what Alaba was doing mixtapes back in the day. And both of them are promotional tools for the music. So shout out to Alaba, man. It's just additional.
Wow. Yeah. All right. So with all these, are distros and label services companies really killing Nigerian record labels?
The long and short answer is no.
Okay.
It's a flat no. But two things. The artist has to know what she wants to do. Like, look at it this way. A lot of people are saying, the only reason people are saying that is because they think the era that we are moving in is the era of ownership, where artists are going to be particular about ownership. But here's the thing. If you really own it and it's not making any money, it still doesn't make any sense. Like, if you own the music, the catalog, and it's still not making any money, it makes no sense. That's why companies like Hypnosis are buying catalogs out, because look at it. In foreign countries, you can own catalog that you're still going to be paying taxes on. That's not making any money. So why do you want to own it?
Own it, right?
It doesn't make any sense. So what these people are overestimating the capabilities of some of these companies, because look at it this way. If these companies, we are going to use the basest artist as an example here. If these companies give like the smallest artist maybe like $7,000 to $10,000, right, to blow, that's what a lot of people consider to be money, because they think like label services companies are giving the smaller artists a chance. Yes, they are. As a matter of fact, they are, because some of these artists would have never seen $10,000 in their lives. They might have never, might have never seen $10,000 in their lives. But guess what? $10,000 is 5.2 million naira, right? 5.2. 5.2 to shoot. If you want to shoot a regular video in Nigeria, maybe you spend like 500,000 or to $1 million, right, on the video shoot. If you shoot 2 videos from an EP, because you have to promote. It's a marketing advance. So usually, if you shoot 2 videos from it, you have 2 million left. You have 3 million left. The money is gone. But guess what? An artist, because he has suffered for a long time and it doesn't want to be paying money for Uber, he might want to buy a car to reduce his costs. He might want to get a new apartment, because when does he know that he's going to get $10,000 again? He might not know. But guess what? In the reality of things, a label but the problem is you can blow with $10,000 because you have TikTok these days. Shout out to you.
Yeah, so TikTok.
You have TikTok these days and some of these other things. A song can just blow anyhow. But the reality is, you can't blow with the exception. You can blow. You can't use the exception. The people that can use $10,000 to blow with TikTok, they are the exception, not the general rule. So we can only use the general rule, which is that to blow in Nigeria, which is blow, quote unquote, is the dream for most Nigerian artists. And if you want to blow, $10,000 is unlikely to make you blow. It's unlikely. If you want to blow in Nigeria, we are talking 50, 70, 60, 70 million naira, sometimes even 100. And what labels offer goes beyond money. It goes into a team. Like they have a team. Maven Records has like 30, 40 staff. Working for maybe 5 artists, and then they have like their artist development programs and some of those other things. Like you can't exchange that for like 10.
And they have the support too.
And they have the support. Like you have seen Nigerian artists literally go from record labels to independence, and their careers just go like that. Right. A lot of Nigerian artists go up because some of the superstars have left labels and gone up, but they are still the exception, not the general rule. And even guess what? People that are giving the exception of like major artists who have like maybe a Whiskey, Davido, who can walk into like a platoon and maybe collect $200,000, $100,000, $300,000, $400,000, $1 million, for example. People are going to say, oh, but those guys are collecting it. But they are Whiskey, Davido. They are not everybody. That's one. Number two, a lot of these boys were signed to labels. Labels were the platform that got them to the point where they could get those monies from those things in the first place. And guess what? The other thing is, an artist also has to know what they want to do, right? They have to know what they want to represent. If you want, I spoke to 2 artists while I was doing the research for the piece that I wrote. And what I got from those 2 artists, two conflicting perspectives that really make sense. One of them said, when he collected like maybe $7,000 or $8,000, right? He realized that, man, he wasn't really going to do anything. And when his EP didn't really make any money for the labels, he realized that he's probably not going to get that money again. So he realized that label service, he wants to blow, and he realized that label services money is not going to get him there. But another artist that I spoke to, who is an alternative artist, realizes that, look, the type of music he makes is unlikely to blow. You get what I mean? Yeah. So $10,000 is something to him. Do you get what I mean? Like, yes, $10,000 is something to him because he's unlikely to make $10,000 on the type of music he makes. So he will gladly stick to that. So it then comes down to what artists have to understand what they want to do. If you want to really blow, then go to the record labels. If you want to remain like retain your ownership, if you want to really blow and sacrifice certain things, go to the record labels. If you want to maintain creative freedom and some of these other things, then go to label services. But here's also the things. Some of the models are overlapping these days. A lot of label services companies are going to 360 deals. Like they realize that they can't, like if some of them are giving $50,000 to certain artists, and streaming is crooked. Some of these artists don't have foreign fan bases like Whiskey and Davido that can make the money back. Label services are not making the money back. They are not. Right? Let's not even go to distros, or like regular distros, because regular distros, their work is just to get you there get your money to the PRO. So what these guys represent, some of these label services companies are now going to 360 deals because they want to make the money back. Like they have to make their ROIs back. But the good thing about some of them is also that they know that there will be bad deals, like there will be horrible deals. But they know that a lot of label services companies know that 10 deals will more than make up for 50 bad deals. But here's the problem with some of these things. Once a lot of these record labels, a lot of these label services companies, you also have to understand that they can't go crazy, right? Like record labels in Lagos are run by young Nigerian big boys. Label services companies can't spend those monies. It's unreasonable. You can't expect them to spend like that. You have to be like most of them are running on venture capital money. It's not reasonable for you to expect them to be spending money like a record label. It's not reasonable. So to tell them to like they can't spend money like you would expect them to, because it doesn't make, if they increase the money, it's going to be to their detriment. Like if they increase the money to the smallest artists, which are giving like $7,000 plus, it's to their detriment. It doesn't make any sense. Because if you start giving $25,000, you are not making $10,000 back. But because it's not enough for the artists, you have to start increasing it. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any business sense. Because it's not even just a thing for them these days. It's also a thing for like streaming platforms and some of these other things. So at the end of the day, and even when it comes down to like the label services that get money, like people are going to say, oh, if you are signed to a proper record labels, like a lot of Nigerian record label bosses now look to like label services to give them money before they work on the artist. But guess what? If your label boss is a regular guy, it's not Naira Marley, it's not Olamide, it's not Whiskey, he doesn't have money, and the artists that decide to label, they are just regular artists. You are not going to get $1 million from Distros. It's not going to happen. So at the end of the day, everybody still has to go spend some money to make some money. So if you want, again, like I said, if you want to blow, you know where to go. If you don't want to blow, you know where to go.
So what will happen if these companies start taking significant losses?
Bruh, they are either going to rein it in and stop giving out money, or they're either going to rein it in and stop giving out money, incentivize the money they give out. Maybe like if they're giving you $10,000 before, like off the cuff, they might start giving maybe $2,000. You show milestones, they give you another maybe 4. You show milestones, they give you the remaining 4, maybe. And the reality is that some of them might even eradicate it, especially if it doesn't make any sense. Like currently, a lot of them operate on a lot of them that give out the advance operate on the mentality that if we give out like 10 good deals, make up for 50 bad deals, because the money you are going to make from 10 good deals will blow everybody. So, but if they realize that they can't even get the 10 good deals out of the 60 that they have handed money out to, they are going to rein it back in. So, to that, a lot of people that are saying that the money is not enough, you are not going to be getting anything anyway. So again, people have to be able to understand the market, understand themselves, and understand what they are playing to, and that's factual.